Okay, we'll go ahead and get started this morning. We are waiting on one more for quorum. But we'll go ahead and get started and move our action items down a little bit. Let's see, so we'll go ahead and start with our Executive Director's project report. Item 4, go for it.
Awesome, thank you. And thank you everyone for being here today. Lots has happened since our last meeting, and we'll kind of go through these. One of the directives from our last meeting was that we continue our outreach to get other communities involved in the commission, and we've been doing that and are continuing to do that. We were able to meet with Mayor Reese, perfect time,
Welcome.
from Cedar Hills, and they expressed an interest in joining the commission. And so we were really excited to have their interest and participation. They'll be taking the final agreement to their council later this month and get that all finalized, but we wanted to have Mayor Reese included today. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
We also have been in discussion with Utah State Parks. It has seemed like a natural connection that we should have with Utah Lake State Park being one of the probably the most highest used parks on the lake. We do a lot of our activities down there. It's the biggest of the access points, and they have also expressed an interest in what we will probably be doing with them is combining a contribution from DNR, Forestry Fire State Lands, and state parks, and so it'll end up being a little more than we get right now, and it will get state parks employee at the table so that we can have direct communication with them and work with them as they're a very big partner on most of the activities that we do down at the lake. So we're excited about that. That's a question that I have for the group. Is everyone comfortable with having state parks at the table? Is that
Concerns, comments?
Seems pretty logical to me.
okay? So we'll go through the paperwork on the interlocal and make those adjustments. But it seems from looking at that interlocal that is a doable thing under the current draft. And then also we have, yesterday I had a meeting with the mayor, Mayor Haken from Mapleton. As you know, Mapleton dropped out of the commission a year ago or so, and Hakes, I apologize, and a lot of that was due to them just having the council member that they had assigned to the commission had just had a hard time coming for probably over a year, and so there was just kind of a disconnect there, and they elected to, among the many options that they have, I'm sure that all municipalities have, they opted out. Their new mayor is very excited about the commission after talking about it, and they will be presenting it back to the commission, or to their council, to be added on, and they let me know that there's a new council member that has worked on projects like the lake for his whole career. He's retired now, and they said, oh, he'll be perfect. He'll be at all your meetings. So that should be great as well. So we're excited to have them back. And then we're still pursuing meetings with Pleasant Grove, and we'll see how that goes. Grants. The Marsh Master purchase, those have been ordered through the county. They're expected to be delivered from Louisiana here in November. And then the county operators, their motor pool guys, are geared up. We've purchased flail mowers, and we're in the process of finishing those purchases, but flail mowers and the hydraulic adapters and some GPS units to get those rigged up so they're ready to use somewhere near the end of December. And then they'll just start working around the clock probably all year long with the grant funds that we're able to pull in through the Department of Natural Resources Watershed Restoration Initiative and the Department of Agriculture's Invasive Species Mitigation Program grant. So we're excited about those. That will open it up so that we'll be able to mow at least the north 4,300 acres. That's kind of the priority area right now that's getting chemically treated every year. but possibly other sections of the lake as time permits that we might open up to grazing, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a little bit here. But that'll be a great change. This year we're planning to finish up with a contract doing some smashing with some dollars that are available and that expire here at the end of December. And again, it's a difference between $11 or $12 an acre and contracted at $60 to $70 an acre. So it really allows us to leverage the dollars that we can pull in from grants and get a lot more done. So, fourth grade field trips, as you have all heard of these, they're a huge success every year. Kids come in hordes. We have 21 classes coming. This is the fall field trip, and this takes place on the west side of the lake, so we try to take care of Alpine West School District is who we prioritize on that. And so 21 classes, just over 600 students, and that'll be on October 9th and 10th down at the Saratoga Springs City Marina. So we're excited about that. City of Saratoga Springs also offered up an employee to do a tour of their new water facility down there at the lake, and so that'll be a fascinating one, as it's a unique, building that goes 30 some odd feet down into the ground and is a wet well system. So it'll be an interesting educational tool for that. Phragmites treatment this year has gone exceptionally well. All 4,300 acres was reviewed, if you will. The helicopter pilot has done this for years and years and years, and is dialed in enough that we show him the area that needs to be done, and he can fly that and spot treat as needed. When he sees native vegetation stands, he can skip over those so that they can stay alive. So all of that acreage was flown, and phragmites, which is a good part of it, was treated this year. So that you're aware, this year an effort was made to reach out to the general public to let them know about this exciting project about treating the phragmites. And interestingly enough, there was a lawsuit, but a nationally viewed lawsuit about Roundup, as you may have heard in the news, and a technician had gotten cancer or something like that, and so our public outreach kind of exploded in a rough way because of everyone's new expertise on Roundup. And so we made a really concerted effort over a few weeks to help kind of dampen the concerns that we were not flying this over communities and spraying wide open across the valley, but rather that this is a very concentrated effort. It's flown immediately above the vegetation. There are rules on the label about overspray and wind conditions, and so it is a very carefully done treatment, and we were able to kind of calm those concerns for the most part. No children were being sprayed, and those are some of the concerns that came up. It was quite an explosion. And we were also able to check with the EPA, because there was valid concerns. This did win in a lawsuit again in favor of the technician that had been using it, and we were able to get in touch with the EPA, the group in the local region, and they were able to confirm that they stand by the label that they have issued for the use of it, and that we're sticking with that label, and that they stand by the science that they used to develop that. Roundup, or Aquanite, we use kind of a water-approved version of Roundup. Will be under review just on its regular cycle next year, and they said if there's any changes, we'll be sure to let you know. But that was good to hear back, so that we could also use that as an extra vacuum for the citizens that had some concerns. The Utah Lake Shoreline Trail progress. As you know, the Rivers, Trails, and Conservation Assistance Program issued a grant of the time of their planner probably 6 months ago. We got off to a strong start, and then there was kind of a quiet period as they got detoured on some other assignments, and so they've now promised us an additional year, so it worked out well. And that also gave some time for things to move along. So we're working again with their planner, and we've got a priority area that we've got some willing landowners and some interesting proposals in the Vineyard to Orem portion of that trail. That would be a big connector because that will allow the UTA train station right there, the front runner station, to be tied in for Orem residents and Vineyard residents to have a outlet through a beautiful wetland area along the Powell Slough. And so that's one area that we would love to prioritize, and as many of you are on the MAG grant board, or the ranking board, we're going to try to resubmit the application for that trail section, and if we could get support from all of you on that, that puts it in the queue for a few years out and lets us do all of the legwork between now and then with private landowners and the county and Orem and Vineyard to allow that to be all ready to go when those dollars become available. So any support we could get on that would be awesome. With the addition of these landowners that are looking to be interested in working out an easement situation, it could be a more prime time to get funding allotted for that. So, and then the other one that we're working with Brandon Stocksdale is the Rivers Trails and Conservation Assistance Program contact. We're also going to look at the potential for a rail trail on the south end of the lake. UTA has vacated a berm that goes through around the south end of the lake, and it's designated to be used for a track spur in 50 years or so. But in the meantime, it would be awesome to get a rail trail down there that would be uninterrupted, probably 25 plus miles of trail on the south end of the lake to kind of extend where a lot of these cyclists are having to go further south and stay on the highways where they're clearly not safe if you've driven the slim highways out there. So it would be a fun time to get that in place, and 50 years later we can work with UTA on figuring out an extension of that so that we can maintain both trail and track. So we'll be working with them, and they've expressed interest to Brandon in that idea. And so just one more large section that we can take care of as we try to get this trail done around the whole lake. Another piece of exciting information, Lincoln Beach. If many of you have been to the county park or the county marina at Lincoln Beach, one of the issues that has been a problem for the last number of years is that the popular location for fishing is just to the south, kind of at the point of Lincoln Point, and it was on private property, and so there was lots of interaction between fishermen and sheriffs, and I don't know so much about with the private landowner, but tickets were being issued on occasion, and we had outreach from the fishing anglers groups to say, help us use this location, it's prime for this, and the county was able to recently acquire that whole portion of property around the point so that can be open for public use. It's popular because there's a warm spring right on the point there, and in the wintertime when the lake ice is over, that location stays liquid and fish congregate there, and so it's just a phenomenal fishing location, and it's popular for that reason. And so we're excited about that. That the county has expressed an interest in getting feedback from our technical committee on ideas for what to do down there. So at a minimum, add a restroom down there closer to the fishing area that's open in the wintertime. But also they're open to some other suggestions. So we're going to try to do some surveys and figure out what would be the best use of that area. But that's super exciting to have that extension of the park down there to attract some more visitors and make it legal. So the county was excited to announce that it had just been completed. And then I'll turn some time over to Brian, Director of Forestry Fire State Lands, to give us a couple updates on some proposals and ideas down there.
I'm going to make it really easy and turn my time over to Laura Hall, my program administrator, and she'll have some details for folks.
I don't have anyone to turn my time over. Thank you. So the Utah Lake restoration project, the Arches project, the islands in Utah Lake, we're currently in the process of seating a resource specialist review team with the Governor's Office of Public Lands Policy Coordination. So Carmen Bailey from that office is working with directors of a number of state agencies to select people to be on the review team. The review team will be tasked with reading the application and figuring out what additional information we may need and what questions are been answered, and if the answers are satisfactory, or if we need more questions and answers. So we're in the process of that. My understanding is the project proponent is planning to engage with the Army Corps of Engineers sometime after the first of the new year. That's kind of the timeline on what will likely be a large environmental impact statement. So that timing, and then the Utah Lake inflow study, is that what we're calling it? So a few weeks ago, Eric and the Department of Agriculture and the Department of Environmental Quality, DWQ, Water Quality, to be exact, and Forestry, Fire, and State Lands did a tour, a 2-day tour of the entire shoreline of Utah Lake, and mapped and looked at all the inflows that are coming in from stormwater, from people's drains in their backyards, to the sewer districts. And there's a meeting tomorrow to finalize a map of all those inflows. I think we found a number that we were unaware of, or some people knew about and others didn't know about. And then some of those are being currently tested by Water Quality and Ag, and I think that a few more will be added to that list to see what's in that water, where that water is exactly coming from. Saratoga has a number of people draining their yards into the lake, and that's been an issue for other reasons. But anyway, I think that's, did I cover everything?
Yeah.
All right, thanks.
So the kind of the purpose behind that inflow study is a proactive approach to the question that will be asked at some point during this Utah Lake water quality study of, where is all the water coming into the lake from? What is the portion of stormwater that's coming into the lake, and how are we monitoring that, or are we aware of that? And so this allows us to have a pinpoint on every one of those inflow locations, so that if that's determined to be a major component of the phosphorus loading or other pollutant loading, that we will be able to monitor those more closely as is dictated by that study. So this just lets us have those all mapped out and be ready for that question when it's asked in that study.
Very good. If we can jump back up to the top, we've got a quorum. We'll take care of our action items. First up, we've got to change the agenda. Eric, you've got something to add about a grant?
Oh yeah, so at our last meeting we mentioned that the Utah Office of Outdoor Recreation has their grant coming up, but we just didn't have the details at the time. They now have made that go live on their website with the application deadlines and all of the details on that. We attend their training conference, and so we will plan to try to reach out and municipalities that have an interest in doing a project on the lake. It's up to $150,000. It's 50-50 match, so it's a really easy way to get a project up and going. Historically, we've had more challenging grants where you have to come up with 75% or something like that, or more. This one will make, I think, a lot of projects, recreation-type infrastructure projects possible here in the valley, so we're excited about that. Happy to work with anyone that has an interest in developing a project that works for them. And again, that'll get sent out. We'll send out the link to that and some details on it, and be available to work with anyone that wants to use that.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, governing board minutes. I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion we approve the South second.
Sorry, I'm next
That's
to
okay.
whispering. That's not good.
I've got Mayor Kafusi with the first.
Second.
Councilman Law with a second. Any discussion on the minutes? All in favor?
Aye.
Monthly financial report.
So if you look through the monthly financial reports, we have our June report. That was the end of our fiscal year. In addition to that report, we also submitted end-of-year reports to the State Auditor's Office and the Transparency Office. So those have been completed. I worked with Chair Barth on those to get that completed up for the year. And then other than that, we're within budget. All of the information's there. If there's any questions on those, happy to answer that.
It was interesting to go through the audit. I really appreciate everything that staff is doing on that. Very transparent and everything. There's one change I think that we talked about making, just to make things even more clear. It's not a big deal. We talked about making sure that when we're doing the double signatures, that the person who's the recipient of a reimbursement isn't one of the two signatures. It's technically, you can have it, one of those signatures be that person. I just thought it would be better if we had that extra buffer where we had that person not be either of the two signatures. So that was the only change that I asked to be made on that one. Do we need to actually approve those minutes, or the financials?
Just financial report.
Okay,
Yeah.
everybody, so take a motion on that.
Move to approve.
Got Councilman Seastrand and Mayor Mann, sorry, it's like Mayor Rod. Very good. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Excellent. Thank you. Jumping down then to, any opposed? Thank you. Yes. Did I miss something? Thank you. It does happen. Excellent. Okay. 2019 communication.
Thank you, Chair Bart. Okay. Well, I'm excited I get to talk to you for a few minutes this time. Usually I'm like at 2 to 3 minutes, I'm out of your hair. But what we wanted to highlight on today was an outreach campaign that we're trying to develop for the next year or two for the Commission's efforts. But first I wanted to highlight one specific effort we just had success on recently, which is we introduced what we call our projects page on the website. So one thing in our outreach we were encountering was a lot of people felt like nothing was being done at the lake. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that. They're like, oh, nobody cares about the lake. XYZ agency or whatever does not care. And so we actually put together this page. As you can kind of see here, I took just a screenshot. All we did was we listed out every single project that we're aware of, and I'm always adding to this, of either ongoing, proposed, or recently completed. So for instance, the Saratoga Springs Marina Dredging Project is on here, as well as the State Park, even those are both finished. And so each project has a paragraph or two just highlighting more or less what the project is. Lets people know what the status is, whether it's completed, underway, it's been proposed. If there's a location for more information, for instance, this one's about the Provo River Delta project, so we've got their website there. We don't have that, we've got a name and contact information for somebody they can talk to about this project. And then we try and put on an estimated completion for each project as well. So it's a great page, it's just UtahLakeCommission.org/projects. A lot of people have already been visiting it, it's stirred some good conversations. As I said, it's 22 currently releasing completed projects. We promoted it online and it reached over 10,000 people. So a lot of people are starting to learn that yes, there is a lot being done on the lake to care for it and improve it. However, the main point of what I want to talk about, and would you help me by giving me a 5-minute warning if I start going too long? Sure. Okay, I can get really excited about this. We talked quite a bit in the office about it. So we discussed our copywriter, Madison, before he left. He and I were discussing how do we really try and focus our efforts on getting better emotional buy-in at the lake and getting people down to the lake more, which is really our purpose in outreach for the Commission. And we've come up with this idea of the Utah Lake is My Lake campaign. So basically I'm going to cover, I know that looks like a lot, I'm going to go over it kind of surface level today. If you have any questions during this though, please interrupt me and ask. Or if you have ideas as well, I do want to hear them. But basically I just want to hit on an overview, and then all those bullets are different efforts that we can use in outreach to try and get to the public more, get them information, and get engaging with them. So first being the overview, Utah Lake is my lake. So we've thought about using a slogan such as the greatest lake on earth. Shelly, this is the t-shirt I was talking about. It's beautiful. I love this shirt. But if you don't like it, let me know. But trying to provide that positive messaging of, a hashtag, Utah Lake is my lake, greatest lake on earth, trying to pound on those positive messages we can. We've also thought about using things like, I don't know if you've all heard of the Ski the Scum t-shirt that apparently existed.
Yeah.
I still have to find evidence of it. I've heard
yes.
plenty of accounts, but I've got to find one, I hope.
Ski the Scum.
We've talked about maybe something unique, like the hashtag that Provo uses is great for their concert series, hashtag Provo Rocks. maybe hitting on what's unique about the lake, like the ice stacks or Bird Island. But all of this focusing on improving public perception, increasing recreational usage, and getting heightened support for the lake. So one of those things we're already doing is our events, the ones that are doing well, our field trips, the festival, the paddleboard camp we started recently. We definitely want to keep those good efforts that we've already been doing going moving forward and improving them still. One thing we recently started is having a booth at city events. So thanks to the additional dollars that Representative Mike McKell was able to gain for us for the festival, we finally were able to put together our own booth. We usually got so busy running the festival and helping out with all of our partners that we kind of forgot that we're an entity as well, and we probably want to talk to people. So I do have a video I'll show in a second, but basically we've had some good successes. We went to the Highland Fling, which was great. I got to chat with Mayor Mann there afterwards. It was a really good experience. And then we also went to Woodland Hills Days, because we want to kind of get two ends of the valley, a little bit different size and scope for testing out the idea, and it went really well. We had a lot of great face-to-face interaction. A lot of people signed up for our newsletters. Some of the banners and stuff were really great success. This is actually our brochure that we designed with the help of our intern, Cheyenne, and then with the help of a graphic designer that we put together that just talks about some facts about the lake, popular recreation at the lake, what the commission is and what we're accomplishing. Kind of a good way to get people engaged. I'm hoping this will show you what some of those materials look like. We'll see if my audio works or not, though. So this is at the Highland Fling. We did a quick video just showing, looks like my audio is not going to work. We have some vertical banners on the outside that hit on the trails, the phragmites treatment. We've got all of our logos of our member commission, or the commission members. Some great maps. We put together some other things like our brochure. We've got some prizes for the kids. The kids love the sunglasses. I tell you, they go like candy. Another great banner just highlighting what the commission does. And then we did some quick footage. No, I don't really talk that fast. This is like times 2,000 speed or something. Just wanted to show we had some really cool conversations, some that lasted a lot longer than our typical engagement online or through other venues that we've used before. So we really enjoyed that. We look forward to doing it in future years at a variety of our member cities, as well as some who may not be as well. Another element is we'd like increase our governing board involvement. And due to time, I won't talk a ton about this, but basically our hope is to try and provide some activities and events for you all to be able to participate in at the lake. Whether that's helping to do a trash cleanup, maybe with some family and friends. We also talked with Chair Barch about having some kind of recreational event to maybe do with your city council, where you could bring them down and help them understand why you love the commission and why you participate on our board. So we'll definitely be looking at doing that in the future year. We also talked about a video series. This is an idea that's been kicking around our staff for some time, including we got some help from Nathan Schwabach from DNR in trying to put this together. Long story short, interviewing people who love the lake. And that's where this whole idea for this campaign originated, was actually with this video series of Utah Lake is my lake because. Why people love the lake, why they care for the lake, why they use the lake, and try and communicate to the people around the lake through the eyes of these people who love the lake. We've also talked about starting a brand ambassador program. Most of you probably already know what that is, but in case anybody doesn't, I had to learn about this. A brand ambassador program is normally used by businesses, but they're basically using social media or online influencers to try and communicate their brand message. So we would use things like giving them swag or doing some kind of special event for these people, and in turn they would write blog posts or post on social media, but helping to try and provide user content that's not coming from us necessarily. So it's not, well, the Utah Lake Commission loves the lake. Of course they love the lake. But instead it's, Mayor Kafusi loves the lake, or, Eric Ellis loves the lake, and they're hearing it from somebody they know. Guess not anymore. Apparently not. We've also talked about increasing municipal recreation at the lake. Linden Marine's been great. I know that operates separately from the city, but they've had several events this year. They did a movie on the water that had over 1,000 people attend. They just did a floating lantern festival last weekend. Unfortunately, I don't have footage because I haven't edited it yet, but we went to that. They had over... Oh, the movie was Jaws, of course.
While
Right?
floating in the lake.
Yeah, while floating in Linden Marine. It was quite entertaining to learn about. The floating lanterns had over 1,400 people attend that and set off their lantern inside the marina. Yes, they cleaned it up, took all good job and everything. You don't have to worry about that. It was a great event. So we've talked about trying to help the cities have more events. Some good examples would be featuring new lake facilities like the Utah Lake State Park improvements, When Lincoln Beach gets these improvements, I know Saratoga Springs has plans for another marina on their north end. When that comes about, those are great opportunities to have more recreation at the lake. Damn, it failed on me. I'll just sit over here. I'll crouch down, make this quicker. We've also talked about creating some new apparel or swag. These are just some examples of the theme of ideas we're looking at, maybe a little bit more, well, my generation would use the word retro, but apparently that's not the correct word from what my wife tells me. But t-shirts, sunglasses, these things are communicating the Utah Lake is my lake, communicating the greatest lake on earth, trying to help people want to help us promote why they love the lake, which is where the Ski the Scum t-shirt fits in. We love that idea too. That one's a fun one. Leveraging the existing Adopt a Shoreline program as well, working with our existing members to promote the lake, continuing to do our annual cleanups that we do. One recent development, the Dedicated Hunter program with Division of Wildlife Resources, we recently got it approved with the local supervisor to actually have dedicated hunters adopt shoreline access points long term. So instead of just a one-time cleanup that we did, they can take it on for the 3 years they're a dedicated hunter and do all their hours by helping us keep the lake clean. So we're excited about that development. That just went live on their website yesterday. This is another idea that came from one of our staff during the summer, Madison. Saw a similar, I guess, display at the MOA ones at BYU, where it was a national parks display. And when you first walked in, they had a little card, and they wanted you to write about an experience you had at the national parks. And so we've been discussing how we could maybe do something similar with, the question, Utah Lake is my lake because, and have people fill out a card at some of our events or city events that we're at, and then we can put those on display and use that messaging yet again from people who love the lake to communicate to people why they should go there more often. So in summary, and I realized that was really fast, we want to focus our efforts on the Utah Lake is My Lake campaign messaging. We want to try and be efficient in developing that emotional ownership, getting people to love the lake. We want to maintain our successful efforts that we've had in the past, introduce some new ones like that brand ambassador program or video series, all with those 3 end goals in sight of improving the public perception, increasing recreational usage, and gaining heightened support for the lake. So that is what I have for you. I know, like I said, that was really quick. I think I spent probably twice as long talking to Chair Barge about it because we're really excited about trying to do this. But are there any thoughts from anything I mentioned? Any critiques or questions or anything?
I have a question for you, Sam.
Yes.
As soon as the news announces that there's an algae bloom on the lake, do we see a dramatic decrease in usage?
I don't have the numbers exactly to say like a resounding yes, but from what I hear from the marina managers and from the state park, yes. And a lot of concern over it. I was just talking with the manager of Linden Marine, and he said he's still getting he's probably exaggerating, but 30 calls a day from people saying, what about the algae? Is it safe? Can I come to your marina? And so it is a very pressing topic.
I just think education is probably more important than anything, as well as perception.
Definitely.
I watch the lake, and it's as soon as you see that, the lake goes glass. And before there's boats out there,
Sure.
They announce the algae bloom, and it just shuts off.
And that's a great point as well. That was part of why we hired on Madison, our copywriter this summer, was he has a little bit of a background in sciences as well as writing. And so he actually developed several blog posts, several of which are on this topic. One we haven't released yet, but it's actually an in-depth explanation of algae blooms and what the warning means and what a danger advisory means, what kind of activities are recommended. So it definitely goes into that educational element. So I appreciate you bringing that up. That's not something I hit on in here, but most assuredly I agree.
I just think we have to counter that.
We've got to make sure we're talking about it. And that was actually the number one question I got at the booths as well, was, when are you going to fix the algae? And it's like, okay, do you have half an hour or do you have 5 minutes? Because we could talk. But I agree with you, definitely. Education is very important.
We'll have one other point that Division of Water Quality is going to talk about for signage, educational signage that will be a big help, we think, on that issue.
Any other questions? Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Good
Sam.
job, Sam.
Okay,
Well, might as well take the cue from Eric and talk about that one first.
that's great.
We've been working for quite a while, since I think June, to develop some permanent signage for 8 locations around the lake. It was probably the most difficult small project I've worked on because we're still at it. As of last week, we had signs printed. We have a contractor in the wings ready to install them. And we had some last minute objection from the health department over the wordage, over the verbiage of cyanobacteria blooms. And so we've issued another version of this signage, and we're waiting for their final kind of buy-in on the word that we're going to term it as HABs/cyanobacteria. Cyanobacteria being the more accurate terminology in terms of what is present in the lake, and HABs being more of a global kind of reference to what is typically used for those type of events. So just waiting to get the final feedback from them on that. Hopefully this weekend we can have them reprinted and installed shortly.
And we've had a little bit of a discussion on those signs as far as how they're going to be used, because they're rather general, if there's a warning or not, those kinds of things. And so it's with the different marinas. Your marina is very different than our marina. And, how do we do that? If you've got a bloom over in the bay, does the marina put their sign out? Do we put our sign out? How do we take care of that? So I think that's going to be...
And part of that, part of the signage at each location, there's an optional warning for, there might be a presence, it matches our warning system in terms of what's safe and what should be a closure. So there's a warning and then there's a closure. So there's some detail that you could have at each location as well as being, notifying the public that, hey, look, when you're out there, you should look for these things.
And the actual wordage on that warning sign is helpful, because rather than having to deal with, there's a warning right here in our marina or somewhere close, it simply says, when you flip that down, when the county flips that down, it says, warning, isolated blooms present on Utah Lake, and then here's the warning
And what to look
points.
for.
And you now know what you need to look for as you're out in the lake. And so when you head out, if you don't see that, you're in a place that doesn't have it. If you head into the back corner of Provo Bay or Goshen Bay and you see this nasty green stuff that resembles what's on that sign, then you know that that's not a good place to be recreating. But it gives people an opportunity to use their own, discovery mode to see, this is out in the vast majority of the lake is not burdened with this algae bloom right now. We're fine out here, and they know just what to watch for problem areas.
Which, as we well know, is the case most of the time, since it's the third largest freshwater lake in the States. So often that will happen right where it's very, very isolated. And so I think, as you were talking about, Councilman Jensen, that's absolutely what we want to do, is make sure we get that information out to everybody so that they know what they should be looking for and what's harmful and what's not. And that for the most part, we can use and recreate on our wonderful lake. So great. Continue, please.
Yeah, so since June, I think, is when this group last met, we've had a lot of activity with the science panel and the steering committee, which is guiding their efforts. They've, through many long conversations, developed operating principles for both of those committees, the participation, how meetings are going to go, et cetera, which is really important with things like that. And they've also developed a charge document that they finalized recently for the science panel, a series of questions focusing on three main areas: what were the historic conditions of the lake? There's mentioned in the historical documentation that it was dominated by macrophytes, et cetera, and what kind of algae were present, what was the nutrient status of the lake at pre-settlement or when settlers arrived, as a way of understanding its history, as well as understanding better what the current state is and how we got here and the nutrient status. And looking at interaction, that's the second main question, is looking at how are carp affecting the ecosystem, what's the nutrient cycling and the contribution from nutrients as well as sources in the watershed as well. You can interrupt me anytime I'm missing something, Eric. And then additional information, other questions associated with other uses around the lake, whether it's shorebirds, et cetera, early life stages, things like that. As you were aware, the intent is ultimately to develop these site-specific criteria for the lake and try to get it back to a state that's where we're minimizing the occurrence of harmful algal blooms and improving the ecology of the lake. So to support the group, we just put out an RFP to get technical assistance for the science panel. They're donating their time graciously, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done to do a number of things, prepare baseline data, develop like a conceptual model of the lake and all the interaction between physical, chemical, biological components that we're going to be reviewing, develop guidance on uncertainty so we can explain, look, we know so much about the science that we've collected, but there's still a lot of uncertainty in how to deal with that uncertainty. And then looking at data gaps and ultimately the approach for how we're going to develop a site-specific nutrient criteria. And so we needed support for that, so right now there's an RFP that's going to get a consultant on board to assist the science panel and the steering committee in guiding the process. So. And then the final item, are there any questions on that? Okay, the final item, we've had a lot over the last 2 years or so of people coming to the division with ideas on how to treat the lake. And so, it's just been kind of willy-nilly. And so in an effort to make that more of a structured process, what we're doing is, in consultation with Forestry, Fire, and State Lands, they recommended that we look into issuing a request for information, which is not necessarily a commitment to engage in a project, but it's just to see what's out there in terms of proposals and so forth. And so I'm in the process of developing a draft. I think we wanted to bring it to this group to see if they're willing to approve the concept and be the sponsor of this. We were struggling a little bit about who would be the appropriate party to issue an RFI. Like I said, it's non-binding. It's just for people to submit proposals in a structured way. The intention is that if it's something we want to engage in, that you can go to an RFP, and then it helps you guide that RFP and know what to put into the RFP for actual projects. And so, it could be anything from whole lake treatments to marina treatments, where you might be just temporarily treating a condition, adding a chemical to mitigate some of the blooms. So there's a wide range of things that have been proposed. But one of the things we want to be careful with is, we don't want to cause damage. We don't want to cause more irreparable harm to the lake or fish or a sensitive species. And so that's going to have to be part of that is asking these vendors, what's been the history of the application of these types of treatments. Can you demonstrate that there's no long-term effects, et cetera, et cetera. So we want to make sure that they provide that information along with the effectiveness of their treatments. So.
And efficiency.
And efficiency.
All right.
Some of these are
Morning, boys.
hugely expensive, and some of them are fairly self-sufficient once you kind of get something started. But it's a big lake to try to do some sort of man-created solution where you're dumping a liquid into it, or you're sprinkling something over the surface of it. A lot of the contractors that provide proposals or suggest proposals to us don't necessarily understand the scope of Utah Lake. It's an awful lot of water and a huge amount of surface area to try to treat effectively, and so we want to kind of flesh that out in this RFI to kind of understand their ability to deal with that kind of scope.
So tied to that, and thank you, I've really struggled with, as ideas and innovations come forward, where do we find the funding or the possibility to be able to try some of them and to prototype and to see if they're going to work? And this kind of comes back to it. Is I love the idea of having a starting point that, start here, and then we can see the things that kind of validate. We've talked before a little bit about Kevin Shirtless. He's a scientist at UVU that kind of thought through an algae eater kind of concept. It's a portable device that can chew up algae. Is that good?
Yeah, so part of the RFI will be threefold. We'll look for biological solutions, mechanical solutions, and chemical solutions.
Yeah.
And so those, we will be entertaining proposals on any of those three alternatives, and that should cover kind of the gamut of what's available. And so projects like Dr. Shirtliff's could come in as one of those mechanical type solutions, and we review that and figure out if that's a valid way to go. And then down the road, it really will be, I think, politically driven, because the water quality study is the long-term solution to figuring out how to deal with harmful algal blooms and nutrient issues for the lake. The short term really is going to be, our Representative McKell or someone says, you know what, we're tired of seeing this in the news. Here's $1 million, fix it today. You have a solution, right? And we want to be prepared for that moment when we're being pushed to find a solution for today, rather than this long-term approach, which you have to be patient for on the long-term one, and that's difficult to do. And so if there's an appetite for it, we would like to know what the best solution is of the wide array that exists.
And do we typically see the funding then coming from the state legislature, or is that part of our responsibility as part of the Lake Commission or as part of the local entities that really drive the greatest economic benefit from the lake? I mean, is that's the thing that's been a little bit challenging for me conceptually, is to say, okay, when it comes time to ante up to solve the problem, where does that fit? Because we all kind of say, well, we don't have any budget and look elsewhere. And I really think this issue of the algae bloom has a significant impact on the long-term perception of Utah Lake and Utah Valley and our economic development down here. And I really think we've got to get in front of this fairly soon. And it's not going to be necessarily free. I mean, and it's not going to be necessarily a couple of $1,000s a year. I think there's some element we need to be looking at that says, how do we really drive a significant resource to be able to really solve this issue? And I don't think it only applies to Utah Lake. I have been amazed at how many algae blooms have developed across the country, in the Great Lakes, in Florida, in Schofield, in areas that don't really see a lot of the same challenges we have here at Utah Lake. It makes me just wonder, do we really understand what's driving this effectively to where we could really, get our hands on it and solve this problem? But I really kind of felt, okay, who has funding available to help with these projects? So I'm thrilled that there's a starting point to go with here. And then the follow-up question is, how do we be able to carry the good ideas forward with appropriate funding to make it happen?
Right, and that's a really good series of questions, actually. And I've done a little bit of benchmarking in other states, and some states institute, like the state of Washington, I believe, has I think it's like a $1 fee that they tack onto boats registrations, and they have a grant program that they have competitive grants for to communities, usually that are associated with a lake or small lake, or that will request funding, whether it's for a nutrient management plan, upgrading septic systems to prevent pollution, in some cases treatment of lakes. So there's a wide range of things, monitoring, notifying the public that it's safe or not, that kind of thing, that they can get funding to help deal with those issues of HABs. So this is a very new thing for the state of Utah. So we're likely to have some purview over it in terms of permitting and whether it's going to cause harm to, unintentional harm to the lake. And so I think, in talking to Eric, I think, the commission could be, an agent in this push to look for those funding sources and those treatment options.
And I think if we can demonstrate that we've gone through a process of analyzing all of these potential options and narrowing it down to one or two that look to be the most effective, most efficient, and safe. When you have that kind of goal in mind and you've been able to narrow it down, it's much easier to reach out in the form of grants and so forth, and requesting from partners to participate when you know that you've got the best available technology to resolve an issue. Partners are much easier to find when you have that than where we are today, which is there's lots of stuff out there, and this one probably is good, and this one's really good, and this one sounds great. but haven't had an opportunity to really kind of narrow in on those. So this will be exciting to kind of be able to do that and then see where we are at the end of it and say, maybe this is a good enough option to pursue it today without any pressure. We know that we want it fixed, so maybe it's something that we can do year to year.
You know, one thing to consider, and you probably already have, but I'm kind of looking at this as if we don't solve the problem, everybody's sewer rates are going to go up because they're going to have to control the phosphorus levels and things like that. So maybe it's through the special service districts that we can find some funding sources through that. Because it'll just make it so they don't have to invest so much money into their district to, you know, lower that phosphorus level. So maybe it's the money saved that could be used to fund some of these operations.
That's something, you know, all of us, I think, are faced with that phosphorus level and the expense to get to that level. And it's not hundreds of thousands, it's millions.
Yeah, it is.
And, you know, you mentioned a minute ago, well, here's $1 million, make it go away. Wow, I wish we could get our phosphorus thing to go away for $1 million, because that's multiple millions to create a treatment plant that gets that phosphorus level that low. And then my concern there is that if you know, Springville City lowers their phosphorus level, does that really help the lake? Because I'm not convinced that we know scientifically that is truly what creates the algae bloom. In fact, I would probably venture there's other things that make that happen.
If it's doing it in Schofield.
Why Schofield?
Yeah.
Because they're not dumping 1.9% phosphorus level into it.
Well, not from wastewater, but there's a lot of.
Correct, yeah, it could be the cattle sitting around the side. It
Cattle,
could be the
erosion.
plants, it could be all kinds of things, yeah.
But that's what the science panel. Hopefully
How's Erica doing with her study? I mean, I sit on another commission, and we talk about Erica's study all the time, but I really don't know how it's going, other than it's going.
Well, like I just reported on, it's just beginning.
Right.
They've done, which I think is a lot of the hard work is framing those questions to guide those, exactly what you're pointing at, in terms of how do we get the information that we need to frame the scenario and fill the data gaps to fully understand the lake.
What's going on? It's good stuff. I appreciate what she's
So
doing.
that'll hopefully answer a lot of those questions, and then, you know, what certainty do we have in that relationship between nutrients and the lake, you know, ecosystem. So.
And tied to that, and this kind of goes back to what Sam was saying, is I think a key opportunity is to change the perception of, if people feel like we're not doing anything, how do we change that perception to say, no, wait a minute, we are, and we have a fast track to where we take whatever idea you have, we have an urgency element tied to it, which is unusual for government entities to a large degree, but we have a way that says this is really important to us. And we now have a starting point, and we have a way to analyze it fairly quickly and try to see if by this next spring we can say, we've got 3 or 4 projects we're trying this year to see if we can help address the algae problem that we know is going to come. And at least get a little publicity from, we are doing something about this to make this problem mitigate.
And the water quality study steering committee expressed an interest in at least weighing in on what we receive from this RFI. If they see validity in using one of these, we received last year from Forestry, Fire and State Lands coffers a $500,000 grant or a $500,000 appropriation to implement research on Utah Lake. And so we have some funding available, and if the steering committee says, hey, this is a good one, let's move ahead with this, then those dollars are available to be used for that, and those were assigned to the commission through the Division of Water Quality as the budget manager of that, I think is kind of the arrangement. So we will have an option here shortly, as soon as we get direction through the science panel to the steering committee to make that happen. So there is funds there right now, but we're trying to make sure that this science panel can kind of guide us on how to prioritize those, because there's a million different questions and solutions possible.
Is it possible to have something by maybe this spring that we can start to try, or?
I really don't know the
You hate to
universe.
rush
I mean,
science,
I'm familiar with a few of the proposals that are out there.
it's iffy.
Yeah, I mean, there's chemical treatment, which are dangerous to the lake, you know, and typically used in isolated conditions, drinking water only sources to control algal blooms, and you know they don't really protect the ecology, which we want to protect in the process. You know, the physical measures, I don't know how financially feasible some of those are, given the size of the lake. You know, so again, I have no way of judging that until we have more information. A lot of times we've gotten calls from people, our staff, and they said, "Oh, can you provide studies where you use this in large-scale applications, or can you provide data to support that it's not harmful?" And they kind of go away after that. You know, so there's a lot of ideas that are floating out there. It's just we need to get better information, more concrete and more structured information from some of the options that are out there.
Excellent. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Jim. Appreciate it. Okay, any other technical committee?
Just a quick update on carp removal. Mike Mills reported that they had a more successful year than they expected this year. Over 2 million pounds were removed, and that kind of concludes the major commercial effort of carp removal on Utah Lake. They hit over 82% reduction from when that program began in carp numbers, and they have landed on 1 million pounds per year as their maintenance mode. And so right now they're working with all the partners that they have to figure out ongoing funding for that. And along with that, they are continuing to pursue the research that's available right now on carp, kind of more permanent carp producing efforts, with kind of genetic modification of carp so that they produce only males, or some of those like carp herpes and things like that they're monitoring the research that's being done elsewhere on that. Australia is doing all the research on that, and as something becomes a better option, they will be ready to pursue that. So that's the only update I have.
Okay. Anything else? I have to go on that. The governing board schedule for next year. Anybody notice any red flags right off? Should be okay on those. We can all obviously
December
move those as we
12th,
need to.
because we're here in October, I bumped the schedule from a November meeting to a early December meeting. Does that generally work for everybody? December 12th.
Got to bring Christmas cookies, but other than that.
Be happy to.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, any board members have any other comments before I open up to public? Any great projects you want to share? Okay, excellent. I'll open up at this time for comments from the public. If you choose to speak, please state your name and also limit your comments to 3 minutes.
I'm your Google Assistant.
Thank you, Google Assistant.
Dr. David Richards, I'm private consulting, I'm consulting. I'm working on Utah Lake for probably, 7 or 8 years now, doing intensive research on the ecology of the lake. I think it's kind of absurd to want to do a treatment of the lake with chemicals right now. This quick fix doesn't make any sense to me. The algal blooms have been going on for the last 50 years or so. We're not quite sure if the algal intensity of the blooms are getting any stronger than they were in the past. So I think a quick fix is more of the Chicken Little thing where the sky is falling, we're more aware of the algal blooms now, but they may not be any worse than they were in the past. But if they were, I was just thinking about this just right now when we were talking about carp removal. The only major thing that's changed in the last few years, if we assume that the algal blooms are increasing, the only real major thing that happened to the lake right now in the last few years has been carp removal. So I think we have to understand a little bit more of the ecology of the lake, where I think biomanipulation is one of the most important things to control the algal blooms. It's going to take longer, right? So if you do carp removal and you're increasing the aquatic macroinvertebrates, the plants, are they going to have an effect on reducing the algal blooms? That's gonna take a while to figure out, but this quick fix of using, if you even think about chemicals, you're gonna really mess up the biota that live in the water column, the zooplankton as well, that feed on the algae, plus the benthic invertebrates like the midges that are in the bottom, also controlling the algal blooms. So you can have major impacts. I think maybe controlled treatments, for example, in Linden Marina or Lincoln Beach Marina, are really good ideas to use limited site-specific controls, possibly using chemical treatments.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Public comments?
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
I figured.
I came back at the right time.
Just for the record, your name again, please.
Hi, everyone. I'm Elliot Mock. I'm a volunteer organizer of recreation events all over Utah, bike rides, hikes, and kayak trips. And we enjoy coming down to Utah County. So, Sam, I'd like to chime in on what you talked about earlier in your outreach, to include the Provo River that flows into the lake, and also the Jordan River that flows out. The section from Bulldog Avenue down to the lake is very pretty. Bird lovers love it. It's a very nice stretch of river. It'd be nice to have a trailhead off Bulldog Avenue, access that section of the river. And then on the other end, it'd be great to have a takeout as close to Jordan Arrows as possible. The Hardman family doesn't like us to use their cement ramp, and so there's 4¼ miles of river that's available above 1500 north. We'd like to access. So your help with that would be really, really appreciated. Let's see.
Question, are you talking about just entrance onto the bike trail or entrance into the river?
Into the river.
Okay.
Into the river. Kayak trips. And I'm always thrilled to hear your comments about phragmites. We were on the river last Saturday by Airplane Park, Saratoga Springs, off of Saratoga Road, which is our most popular, most frequent access point, and of course the airplanes are flying there. And we always find them on the river or in the bushes, the phragmites. And I made the mistake, my mistake, of picking one up and trying to wade through the phragmites to return it to the airport. Well, the distance I needed to go was like from here to the end of the building. So I ran my boat into the phragmites where I couldn't go any farther. I was stuck. And I got out and I waded through as best I could. Boy, those are really thick weeds. So anything you can do to remove those would be appreciated. They're really a problem on sections of the Jordan River. Consider a full moon float on the Jordan River from Saratoga Springs up to 1500 north or to Willow Park. The river features here in Utah County are unlike any other section. It's wide, it's broad, it's easy to maneuver, it's smooth flowing. I do full moon floats north of here, and they're very popular. And I think they'd be popular here as a way to outreach your resource. So that's what I have to say. Thank you, Shelley.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else? Excellent. Our next meeting then will be December 12th instead of in November, and we will adjourn if there's nothing further.